This program is brought to you in association with First National Bank of Botswana. It's a common saying that fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. The quote effectively means there's no doubt that we all have great dreams and we all strive to achieve them. However, what prevents the majority of us from taking the first step is not failure, but rather fear of failure and uncertainty about the future, or whether or not we are good enough to even be having that dream or goal. This is the fear to start anything, be it a business, that podcast, the fear that you would be found out that you are not good enough, or it could be a fear to speak up when you want better for yourself at work. According to writer Meet Shah, this fear stems from self-doubt, a symptom of a far much deeper complex. To put things into perspective, when one fails, it means they have taken the steps toward reaching that goal. Self-doubt, on the other hand, may prompt one to abandon their efforts even before they begin. So how do we become masters of this doubt, to turn it into self-belief so that we can thrive in achieving our goals and allowing ourselves to dream even bigger? We're here tonight with mentor and mental health coach Wairimu Gachungi at Mentorship for Excellence to discuss key points around this topic.
I'll give you a little bit of my background because I am one lady who grew up with a lot of self-doubt. Yes, and because I believe a lot of self-doubt come from our backgrounds and the way we grew up, our socialization. Yeah, I'm raised by a single mother, a woman who had 12 children and whose husband died when she was only 38. So being an eighth born in a family of 12 siblings, I was a middle child. And as a middle child, you're kind of lost in these whole 12 siblings. And you grow up with a lot of wondering, who am I? That can be one of the root cause. Issues of identity, issues of lack of a father. There are a lot of young women out there like me who grew up wondering, am I good enough? Do I fit in this society? Have I been motivated enough? A lot of other self-doubts come from, apart from background, is you get to a developmental stage in the teenage age. You know, where you're going through transition. Like me, I always give an example as I'm training my body structure. You begin to become big or small and you wonder, do I fit in a certain category? And we carry these things even into our adulthood. And unless we process them, they do not go. And for me, I believe a lot of that is self-doubt can develop from there. Other areas that self-doubt come from is kids in school who go through bullying, you know. And sometimes, especially in Africa, we minimize bullying, but that can become an issue to any individual as we grow up. Yeah.
I want us to make some sort of distinction, if there's any, anyway.
Yes.
You know, we speak of self-doubt as maybe somebody not believing that they're not good enough. And
Yes.
somebody may look at it as imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So perhaps you could make a distinction there if there's anything, or if there isn't, unpack what imposter syndrome is.
Yeah. Let me first talk about not believing you're good enough. And I'm not sure whether I've said to you that I'm a therapist. Yes, not good enough for me, as I said earlier, it comes from where we are coming from. We tend to compare ourselves with other people. For example, you're growing up in Botswana and you school in a school in Kalahari or in Masunga, and you grow up and you meet people who have gone to good schools like Marwapula or Rainbow or Lehigh Academy, and you begin to compare yourself with them. Maybe because of the way they speak their English. Maybe because of the influence from their families. Maybe because they belong to a social status that you don't think that you are. Maybe because of the level of education. Maybe because of who you associate yourself with. And that can make us feel like we are not good enough. Sometimes I look at people like, let's say, Michelle Obama, and who was a first lady. And over the years, she talked about feeling not good enough, self-doubting herself. An excellent student from her childhood, because of where she had come from, went all the way to go to Princeton University, to Harvard University, to become a first lady. But over the years, she still felt not good enough. I am not sure I can speak a lot to the imposter syndrome. I would rather stick to not feeling good enough. Because that is what maybe our people here in Botswana may understand more. Yes.
Then let us then unpack that.
Yes.
Why would you not feel good enough? And then why would you also feel like you would be found out that you are not good enough? Why would anybody have or foster those feelings?
It's just basically lack of confidence. Lack of knowing your self-worth. Lack of knowing your identity, that you're complete as yourself. That you're not anybody else. That you are packaged by God who created us with gifts and talents and strength that you have not unleashed, or you're not been taught, or you've not identified. You have not looked into your personal resources to know what are my strengths that I can tap into that make me worth of presenting myself and showing up in the world. Yes. And so for me, the issue of lack of confidence, and growing up in Africa, sometimes we don't get that a lot. Probably because, and especially in my generation, I hope the parents of this generation are doing better than us. Nobody had time to start telling you what you're worth. Ponaseho, as you look at me, I grew up believing I was the ugliest woman in the world because of body shaming. Because you're told, you are so black. That make me compare myself, my skin, with other kids who are lighter than me. And anytime I showed up, and person who looked a little bit lighter than me, including my own siblings, I had some inferiority complexes. And it takes a lot of time, to deal with that. Some of it might even need some counseling and some therapy so that we are able to show up into the world as good enough and show our self-worth.
Let us further unpack that, especially from the African culture perspective, right? A bit of self-doubt sometimes is packaged as being humble or showing a bit of humility, right? How do we differentiate that? What is the difference between being humble, being a person of humility, and you literally diminishing yourself to fit a certain narrative?
Yeah, I talk a lot, okay? Yes, and I grew up like that, and many people who talk like me, you are considered to be showing off. And sometimes instead of developing that, because it's a talent that God gave us, it is diminished. And so it's the tendency of trying to cover that light so that you're not seen to be showing off. Unlike other kids who are just born shy, they are quiet, they are introverted, they're not extroverted like others, But for me, I would like to talk more about developing the strengths you have. When you realize who you are, and that's why I'm talking a lot of knowing your own personal identity, you are able to discover, what do I have? What has God gifted me? What can I do with it? Do I keep quiet so that I'm seen like I'm humble? Or do I show up in the world? Develop those talents, develop those skills so that I show up with confidence. The other thing I think we have not tackled well, especially in our schools, is just training kids on self-confidence. And that is something we might need to begin to bring into those spaces.
But what would it take, to bringing such solutions to these spaces? I mean, we are talking here about self-doubt, but in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about it in the context of being able to have dreams, sometimes bigger than is logical, and still be able to believe that you will achieve those dreams, what would it take?
I think quite a lot of it take a bit of mentoring and coaching, and also looking up to people who have achieved the things we want to achieve. Let's take a situation like sports. Kids who play basketball. You know, the greatest player of our time is Michael Jordan. You study his story. That guy was dismissed when he was, I think, in college or in high school, and only to be discovered later. His dream could have been deemed by somebody who did not see his worth. But Michael Jordan, when I read his story, he woke up every day. He went to train. I think here is where the mindset thing comes in, that we need to begin to change how we think, how we look at ourselves. And for me, mindset is not just thinking positive. Oh, I can believe who I am and become who I am. It doesn't happen that way. It is a process. It's a process where you have focus on yourself. What is it that makes me doubt myself so hard? Then you have a plan to come out of this self-doubt. The plan is, will I get a coach? Will I get a counselor? Will I get a mentor? Then number 3 component is you work hard on that. You put work, you put discipline, you practice. I tell kids who come to my counseling room, because I'm a therapist, stand on the mirror and tell yourself what you think you are, and then go out and practice it. And then you apply your 4th component on this. You learn on yourself and you improve, and that develop a lot of self-confidence.
In closing, really, if it's not unfair to ask you this question, for somebody else, this might be an issue of, it's some sort of legacy, where you're saying in Africa, you don't hear enough that you're good enough. I'm proud of you. I love you. That sort of thing. So how then is that part of this problem tackled? Because the generation that was unable to say these things and foster this kind of confidence is still alive, right? And there's an interlap now. So how do you bridge that gap so that that legacy does not have an effect on what the new generation is trying to, first of all, heal? And then secondly, try not to pass on to the next generation.
Here you're talking to somebody who is already feeling some self-doubt because they have inherited this from the legacy we are talking about. Number 1, learn your self-worth. Cultivate it. Find it in you. Find your strength. Number 2, learn some self-talk. You know. Number 3, improve or develop your strengths more than you do your weaknesses. And number 4, find some support. When you have healed yourself, then you'll be able to pass it on to your children and your children's children. But we cannot pass it on when you already sick ourselves. You sick with all this self-doubt. You're not good enough, especially Botswana. Can I throw this in? Botswana, we are bad in bringing each other down. Number 1, you tell somebody, can I say it in Setswana? Omo kima kima. You are way too fat. If that child has grown up being told she's fat, you are way too ugly, you're too black. If she has had that over the years, the light is dimmed. They develops low self-esteem, inferiority complexes, and that you find it being passed over. We call it intergenerational. It is going to be passed over to the other generations that are coming up. So what I would say we deal with first is us who are in this generation, who are sick with this self-doubt. We find help. We do self-talk. We look for support groups. We look for mentors. We look for coaches so that we can be able to pass a better legacy of affirmation, of praising our children, and doing the better things that were not done to us. That's how I would look at it.